Hey, good morning, everyone. I am Commissioner Asim Rahman, and I'm calling the June 12th, 2025 meeting of the Environmental Control Board to order. It's good to see everyone. I'd like to ask our parliamentarian to conduct a roll call to verify quorum.
Good morning. Commissioner Asim Rahman.
Present.
Shamanda Graham.
Present.
Jose Marquez.
Present.
Beth Nauer.
Present.
Madeline Ligori. Russell Pacunis. Harminder Paul Rana.
Present.
Schneid.
Present.
Matthew Smith.
Present.
Douglas Swan. Lisa Urban.
Present.
Jared Whittington.
Present.
We have quorum 9 out of 12.
All right, so we'll first move on to the minutes of the April 3rd, 2025 board meeting. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to review those. I'd like to ask for a motion and a second to adopt the minutes. The motion from Shamanda, a second from Matthew. And follow
Yes.
up, please.
Are there any objections to the motion adopting the minutes of the April 3rd, 2025 ECB meeting? Seeing none, hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously.
Okay. Next, we have a few items on the agenda that involve DEP. Russ is not with us yet. Hopefully he'll be here soon. So what we can do is move into executive session to cover the business there. I'd like to ask for a motion and a second to go into executive session. See a motion from Matt and a second from Shamanda. So we're going to go into executive session for the folks who are non-public. We will return when the executive session, for the folks who are in the public audience. Okay. All right, we are returning to public session after our executive session. We've been joined by Russ Pacunis from DEP. And the next order of business will be to discuss a full board appeal, which is DOB versus Citywide Builders Group Incorporated, appeal number 25-00093. There is a decision under consideration to dismiss the summons, and we can now ask for a motion to vote on the dismissal. We have a motion. Okay, I see a motion for Matthew and a second for Matthew.
Are there any objections to the motion to call for a roll call vote? Seeing none, hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously.
Okay, let's move to a vote for the dismissal in DOB versus Citywide Builders Group Incorporated, appeal number 25-00093.
Commissioner Asim Rahman.
Yeah, dismiss.
Shamanda Graham.
Abstain.
Jose Marquez.
Dismiss.
Elizabeth Nauer.
Dismiss.
Madeline Ligori here. Russell Pacunis.
Dismiss.
Harminder Paul Rana.
Abstain.
Matthew Schneid.
Dismiss.
Matthew Smith.
Dismiss.
Douglas Swan is not here. Lisa Urban.
Abstain.
Jared Whittington.
Dismiss.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7 for dismiss, and 1, 2, 3 abstentions. So the dismissal passes.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. All right, we will now move to items on the agenda that are being led by DEP. We'll start with the request for cease and desist orders. Russell?
All right, thank you. Russell Pacunis with DEP Legal. So for this meeting, DEP has 5 requests for cease and desist orders. We can start, unless there's any particular order that you want to do them in. We can start with the one for Bridgeview 3 Housing Corp. This is an apartment building located at 8-10 27th Avenue in Queens. It has 2 federal boilers with Gordon flat burners. And those that equipment has had its air code permits expired since 2011. And they have been issued a series of summonses. The first summons for fuel burning equipment without a valid certificate of operation was issued in July of 2021. They defaulted on that violation, but did pay the default penalty. They were then issued 2 summonses last year in January and in September, and were found in violation after hearing on both of those. A 4th summons was issued last month. At this point, DEP does not feel like it's gaining anything to continue to issue summonses. So we are requesting that the board issue an order to cease and desist.
Thanks. Just a question, Russ. I'm looking and seeing a default paid in full and then twice in 2024, 2 violations. Were those after hearings?
Yeah, the violation means after hearing.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So they had a full opportunity to present their case.
Yeah, so they've been aware of all 3
Okay.
of the previous summons.
No questions by me, Elizabeth?
I was just wondering if you had an understanding of why the permit wasn't renewed. It looked like this was natural gas or number 2 equipment, so.
No, this is not one of those number 4 oil issues. This is a valid permit to use number 2 and natural gas. They have just not
It's not-
renewed it. It's
whatever
just
it is.
operating without a current permit.
Yeah, Shimon.
Yeah.
It says here there's a hearing on 6/18/25. And I know you're also asking the board to approve this request. So how does that square? Is that hearing going to, because after we approve this request, isn't there a special hearing?
Yeah, there would be a special hearing scheduled separately, which would be not, I mean, 6/18 is,
Next week.
Very
is,
close.
yeah,
that's why.
so the special hearing will be after the 6/18.
Okay.
Another question? No? Okay. All right, so what I'd like to propose is, Russ, you go through all of these, but if individuals have any concerns or objections that they think might cause them to vote against one of these, raise those as these come up individually.
Okay, well, we may then want to go to the second.
Okay?
Because the second one is quite an unusual one. This pertains to 40 Orden Street in Manhattan, which is way up there in Inwood.
Oh.
And so we had been receiving complaints last year quite persistently about noise from roosters crowing at this building.
How many people would think we would have that in New York City? But anyway,
And,
sorry, my aside.
So inspections in July and October of last year resulted in summonses being issued to the building owner. This is an apartment building. They had hearing dates scheduled in October and January, and they defaulted on both of those summonses. In response, so then this year, on April 1st, there was an article which is attached at the end of your package in the New York Post, as well as several reports on local news, channel 2, 4, 7, 5, and 7, I think, all had stories on this.
April
and-
Fool's Day, I'll just have.
Yeah.
I'm
and-
sorry, another
and-
gratuitous aside.
In response to the media coverage, we went back. In response to the media coverage, I was asked to prepare this as a request for a cease and desist order for this board meeting. Okay. Then, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, in response to complaints, we went back and found the chickens, these Indonesian black chickens, apparently very rare and a great delicacy. had disappeared. The chickens had disappeared. I'm not sure about the parrot or the turtle, but the chickens had disappeared. So I then went to the Bureau and said, do you want me to pull the request for a cease and desist order? And they said, present it anyway, because number one, and this was confirmed earlier this week, the only thing that has disappeared is the chickens. Everything else that you see in the photographs in the New York Post story, the cages that they were keeping them in, all the rest of it is still there as of this week. Only the birds have disappeared. So my instructions were,
That's the rooster.
my instructions were to still present it to the board first, because restoring the condition would be as simple as just bringing the birds back and putting them back in. This is in a courtyard of this building. And the second thing is, it was discussed amongst us that the health department and the police department, both of whom may have the authority, which we would not have, to go in and clear this out, both sit on the board. So my instructions were, as a result of those two things, to present this to the board, even though the chickens are gone.
But to be clear, you're asking for a cease and desist order with respect to violations of the noise code.
To the noise code that would, for compliance, would require the courtyard to be cleared. Since normally a cease and desist order for noise is based on the equipment making the noise. Here, the equipment making the noise is birds. So we can't seal them unless we were gonna wrap some tape around their beaks or something. We could not seal the equipment. So the idea would be to render this impossible to happen again by means of requiring them to remove the infrastructure that this guy has in the courtyard that allows him to keep the chickens there. So recognizing that this is an extremely unusual and outside the box request, I was still directed to make it.
So one more question, sorry, Elizabeth. There's reference to different birds. And so when you say the chickens are gone, are there any animals remaining who are making noise?
Well, the two summonses both specifically reference roosters.
Yes.
According to the New York Post, there is also a parrot. I don't know that any of the violations were connected to the parrot.
But in your request for a cease and desist order, are there continuing offending conditions?
As of the inspection that we did the other day, the information that I was given was specifically that the chickens are gone.
Okay.
The roosters still there?
Hmm?
Are the roosters still there?
All of the.
All the fowl. All
The
the
fowl
fowl
are gone.
have flown.
Elizabeth?
Okay, a few things. So my understanding was that roosters are not permitted in New York.
That is correct. They are specifically
There were.
prohibited by the health code.
Right, so, and I think it has a relationship to noise, the purpose of that being illegal. So I guess in terms of like removing the infrastructure, I don't know if they only had roosters there, that seems unlikely.
No, they have roosters and
And
chickens. They have a
or-
flock of
But they
Right.
can have
chickens.
You're allowed to have chickens.
Right, so, and the chickens, the hens are not making the noise, right? So removing the infrastructure would also be taking away the home of the permitted and non-noisy owl. So I guess that's one issue. And then the other, so the other one is sort of like, is there like a live violation now if they're
Well, again,
gone?
the offending flock having been removed, If
I
it
understand
if it
that
stays
you hide them
removed,
somewhere.
then that's fine.
But
It's
no,
not
but
a
it's
problem.
if we issue this, I guess I'm just wondering how this would play out. If we issue this cease and desist order and the inspectors go back and I guess there's a hearing first, right?
There'd be
There
a
would
hearing.
They'd have an opportunity to present their case, and I guess they could come in and say, the roosters we found new homes for them in the country, and we only have none.
I mean, there'd be nothing for us to seal. Our only
Okay.
authority is to seal equipment. It's not to remove anything.
Right.
So that was again why it was suggested that because there are agencies on the board that may have the authority to require them to remove something,
Yeah.
which we don't, that we should present this anyway.
Yeah. Not much to seize, Lisa, and
So I remember I think it was at our last board meeting, we had a whole discussion about cease and desist orders when I think it was an air conditioning, an HVAC unit.
large building.
Right, and there was a whole discussion about the fact that the HVAC wasn't running at the time
Yep.
that we were asking for the HVAC, I mean, the cease and desist. And we said, well, it doesn't matter because the cease and, not we all, but I think there was a discussion and ultimately a determination that it didn't matter, we could still issue the cease and desist order. If I'm not wrong about what the ultimate result was, which I think is what it was. So I think that the precedent that we set was, you could, based on that discussion last time, the equipment's still there for the
It would make
chickens and
sense.
roosters, make the assumption that he hasn't really complied, even though he's taken the roosters somewhere else perhaps, or put them somewhere else.
A
when
little
they
different.
inspect-
The air conditioner made the noise versus here it's the roosters. make
Right, but
noise
the
when they're
roosters
not
you can
there.
move quickly as opposed to an air conditioning unit. I mean, it's still the same theory on a cease and desist, that you're asking someone to cease and desist something that was not going on at the time that we issued our determination on.
The only time in the past that we have asked the board to issue a cease and desist order for violation of this section
Mhm.
for excessive noise from animals related to a veterinarian's office where they had a separate building that they boarded animals in, dogs.
Mhm.
And the complaints were about dog barking at all hours of the day and night from the part of the veterinarians that they were using to board dogs.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And the board did approve that request. On the theory, I think that was a business the part of the business that could be closed if they didn't comply with it. So that's not really very analogous to this,
No.
but it's the only other time when we've asked for a cease and desist order about noise from live animals.
Now, my issue is not so much the type of violations. Obviously, I know roosters are very noisy. My issue is that, we've said in the past, at least for the short time I've been on the board, that you can issue a cease and desist order even though the violation's not occurring.
Not occurring at the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Got it, Matthew, and then,
So, I think the cease and desist order is good for notice that if you bring your birds back and they make noise, we're gonna
Right.
give you a noise violation. That has nothing to do with go knock your hen house down. So I think that's a separate issue that's more in your backyard, which is,
Okay.
we have to. issue of the job on front yard, and
Right,
that's-
and I don't know if there's anything about this the way it is now. I haven't been there myself. I've seen the photos and the Post article that would constitute a violation that would allow either the health department or the police department to do anything about
Yeah,
this.
no, like we
The
would,
rooster.
but I think if we narrowly construe this to just have to do with the noise and not have to do with you have a structure that can't be here or you have animals that can't be here, I think it's notice that you can't have the noise.
Matthew and then Shimon.
Yeah, I agree with the other Matthew. It's like, first of all, if there's a rooster, the police should be called, right? That's an illegal pet. It's not
Clubhouse
really.
to-
It's a different.
Yeah, we could be notified, but I mean, we
But
have,
we're
to
just-
my knowledge,
we're
we
not
haven't been
saying-
notified, so.
The cease and desist doesn't say you have to take down the, the structure, right? Because if that's a legal structure, I don't know if it is, but assuming it is, that could say you'd have to remove the offending animal, I guess.
But I think what
Well,
Russ is
yeah.
saying is that if we issue a cease and desist order, the remedy that if they don't, show compliance at a hearing, the remedy that DEP could do is removing the quote unquote physical equipment.
That's right.
Yeah,
What
again,
I'm
if-
using is, I don't think that's appropriate because
Right.
that equipment is not making the noise and it also houses other animals which are not the offender.
But that's what actually my whole entire question here. What are we doing here? We saying you have to remove the pet, which is, I guess fine. Or we think you have to take down this entire apparatus, which I'm assuming is legal, but it may not be. But for the purpose of this conversation, I'm assuming it's legal. Like, that's not the right outcome. Or do you, at the hearing, you determine what the outcome will be? Saying either remove the pet or do X, Y, and Z.
Well, there's also, I'm sorry, Shimon, you had your hand up.
Go ahead.
There's the request for order cease and desist starts a process, and the next step in the process is a hearing. And if DEP's only remedy is to seal the equipment, then, there's a scenario under which a hearing officer could say yes, or the hearing officer could say no, if there's evidence presented that this is not happening, it's not going to happen again, or the only animals that are going to be there are chickens or pigeons or whatnot, and not roosters, in which case there wouldn't be a ceiling, in which case it would be, it would still allow for the respondent to engage in other lawful activity involving animals. So I don't think it's a excessive punishment if respondent is able to demonstrate that they will use that structure lawfully. I think, but I'm not sure. Shimon and then Lisa.
So my question is that the previous summonses were issued to the owner, correct?
To the building.
To the property.
This is the
building
LLC that owns the apartment building,
Okay.
because this is in the courtyard of the apartment building.
And they've defaulted.
They defaulted on the two
Okay.
summonses,
Yeah.
yes.
So my question is, does DEP have the authority, because this all seems to be stemming from a tenant, right? And if taken for true what the article is saying, that there are other complaints, rodents, illegal encampments, unsanitary conditions, then isn't it possible that we have a business entity that's a landlord that is really being unresponsive to violating conditions that are at their property, even for something to get this bad? If you own a property, think of this as a building, there are other tenants. I don't see an active landlord allowing a zoo to be placed in the courtyard,
I don't.
knowing that they have these other tenants and roosters. So my fear is that the landlord is going to be just as unresponsive as they have been in the past.
Yeah.
And that's not going to get compliance. So I'm wondering if DEP has the authority like DOB, where you can determine that the tenant, the responsible party. Now, don't get me wrong, I really don't want the tenant to be in here, stuck with a vial, but the tenant is the person doing the act. So maybe you will get movement if the respondent was actually the tenant opposed to the landlord. As long as
Well,
it's
he
the landlord.
declined to give his name to the reporter from the Post. And as far as I know, he has also
Cool.
declined to give his name to our inspectors.
Okay.
The tenants? You mean?
The guy in the photos holding the chicken in the one.
Yeah, Lisa.
So
What
two
is it apparently?
things. One is, we don't know if the landlord started an eviction proceeding against the tenant. It's very possible they might have started.
We
a
don't
nuisance
know that,
proceeding.
but we do know that somebody has filed some kind of a lawsuit because it's mentioned in the article.
Yeah, so it's possible that, because that's really the landlord's remedy, is that they can't move this stuff without getting an order, although it
If it is.
is on there in the
the
public
yeah.
area, maybe they can. The other thing is looking at the items there, it's not really a structure. I mean, they're basically dog crates. And if they're unsanitary, I would think that DEP could come in and,
Well, that'd be great.
That'd be helpful.
well, yeah, Department of Health, actually, I guess, would come in. And the last thing I'm gonna say on the topic is that I don't think they're pets. I mean, he says in the article, the meat is good. So,
Maybe he hated them.
you know, and also he's using the eggs. I mean, he's got 24 chickens there, you know.
Well, he's selling the eggs for $25 a dozen.
Well, I'll also add that DOB has some open violations
Uh,
for 10 roosters. And they were issued to, I'd like to say that, well, the violation says failure to maintain, observed approximately 10 roosters being stored in the courtyard at exposure number 1, repair and replace and remove your roosters.
This is a
Cockadoo.
courtyard for that address.
Mhm.
incisions
Against the
were-
landlord,
I was.
owner of the property.
I was just about to say against the owner of the property, and the way you comply with DOB violations is to certify correction, which is to prove that everything has ceased and they're gone, right? But DOB would run into the same issues that you would have, that, first of all, the cages are not illegal unless they're blocking egress or something like that. We may be able to go another route. But if they wanted to prove compliance and they showed us photos that there's no more roosters, my team would actually have to accept that. So I really think as a city, the health department collaboration is what really needs to happen here.
Mhm.
In order to address the roosters themselves. And then even if we go forward with the cease and desist, just to address noise overall, I think both things should happen. I really
Well, I
do.
mean, there's a lot of options, it seems like, that this city has. There's a number of enforcement agencies around the table here, whose individual agencies can discuss if they want to take additional enforcement. The question in front of us is, should DEP, should we approve a cease and desist order request for DEP that would take the building owner to a hearing on why this equipment should not be sealed at their property. So I just want to, while we're all brainstorming generally, I want to kind of refocus us to that question of, is this something that should be approved? And maybe the answer is yes, because of the potential, because of the evidence so far and the potential ongoing noise. Or maybe the answer is no, because the last inspection shows that there's been no noise, or maybe there's other reasons where one might vote against it, because is it effective going to the landlord? But I want to kind of bring us back to that and see what people think as to the cease and desist order request.
And just say one more thing. I mean, in terms of the landlord can't just remove this guy's personal property without an order, an eviction order or some other order from.
Even in a common area.
Yeah,
Okay.
even in a I mean, it's somebody's property, so he can't just go, I mean, he
But isn't
could.
that a violation? Forgive me, my lack of real estate and property law, but if I'm a tenant, I'm not allowed to just put my stuff in a common area, can?
No,
Isn't that a
you're not.
violation of the
You're
tenant?
not, But
We
it's
don't,
still.
we don't know what the arrangement.
Well,
is.
it depends.
But just general,
Well,
But that doesn't mean that-
For all we know, two
Right.
landlords ago said you can do this, and he has some writing, and they're fighting.
More
over it.
exclusive access. to the
So,
courtyard.
yeah, so I mean, I
It's the
would,
landlord's
I
license agreement. Who
I
knows?
would
We don't
bet-
know.
right.
I assume if the if there's all these violations, my gut reaction is telling me the landlord does not want the animals.
and it started, I'm sure they
Who-
started in.
And I'm sure every neighbor is really, really annoyed. Like, I would be upset if a rooster is crying out 35 a.m.
So there could be a third option. We can vote to approve the cease and desist order. We can vote against the request for a cease and desist order, or we can ask DEP to represent it at the next meeting. And see what, because who knows what might transpire between now and then. That's proverbially kicking the can down the road. But that, I just want to put that out there as.
My only question, if we did issue the cease and desist order, when you seal the equipment, is that the only option, is to take the cages out, just remove everything?
We would not even our inspectors would not even have the authority to take the cages out. They could probably wrap some sealing tape around them so that you wouldn't be able to use the cages without breaking the sealing tape. But our inspectors have no authority to remove anything.
So if the inspector arrived with the cease and desist order, operable, and the chickens were there, then what?
They
Sounds
probably
like what
call the
happened.
ASPC. They
Yeah,
probably
I
call the ASPC.
I mean, our authority under the cease and desist order would be, normally, I mean, if they showed up for the hearing, normally the recommendation that comes to the board is that they be allowed to continue using the equipment subject to inspection for 6 months. And if we find a violation within the next 6 months, we can seal the equipment. If they default on the hearing, then we're authorized, as soon as we get the official confirmation from oath of the default, we can go seal the equipment. So what we would be able to seal here would be, in effect, the cages, which are currently empty.
But if you showed up and the cages were not empty, then what would happen?
I guess then it would become an issue of what was in the cages.
If the roosters are there and they're making noise, what do you do?
That's
They
it.
have
That
to
again,
call-
I
They have animal
Can
control.
we seal the
The animal
cages with the
control.
roosters in them? I don't think we can, because you can't do that.
It's the same-
You can
it's
call
the
animal
same
care and
when you do
control.
when you would do an eviction proceeding, if there's an animal in an apartment, when you go with your legal document to evict a tenant, you have to call animal control. So it's this, I would think it would be the same theory.
Yeah,
You
I
go
would
there
think
with
if
the
we went and
chickens, you
found
call animal
chickens again,
control.
that what we
Right.
would probably do is call the health department.
The
Animal
health-
care and control.
Animal
And
care
you
and
would
control,
call
yeah.
animal care.
Care and control.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they'd
because
have
I
we
to-
think
have-
so. I can't speak for, yeah.
We would have no
how the animal-
authority.
Told us
to-
I would call him.
It's like this tennis courtyard is what it
Yeah,
looks like.
It's an untenable situation.
Yeah.
Untenable, but
It's
it's, there's a question mark here of, is the path, is this the right path to take? Like, you know, there is something, I think, attractive to putting someone on notice that you have to come and here's a cease and desist order. But if the tools on the back end are so limited, and maybe not the right tools, like the right tools are to kind of get rid of the animals, but that's not something DEP can do, then I'm struggling with if this is the right.
But it starts the process, doesn't it start the process?
It starts a
though?
process.
Yeah.
But a process that kind of has an odd end to it. Whereas if it was brought by other agencies, maybe it would line up better, but
Yeah, I mean, if
Yeah.
they never bring the chickens, the roosters specifically, the roosters back,
right.
then apparently this is a dead issue as far as we're concerned, because it
Right.
was the roosters that were making the noise, and this is a noise issue.
Right.
Whether
If
there
you-
are other issues around
Yeah,
what this guy is doing in this space, it would no longer be a noise issue as long as there are no roosters.
correct. But if we proceed with the cease and desist order and they default, then you've got an interesting situation.
Then we have a situation where we really couldn't do anything to enforce that.
Yeah.
If you
So-
went-
and then Matt.
I'm so sorry. If you went and the cages were, and I have to ask this question, and the cages were there and the roosters were outside of the cages, then what? But the reason why I'm bringing that up is because sealing the cages does not prevent animals from being there when you have a person who's taken over your entire courtyard.
It also doesn't prevent them from going to Petco and buying more dog cages.
Yeah, that's true,
Yeah,
too
It
as
also looked
well.
Like the cages aren't the noise-making equipment.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, honestly, like it's not a DEP issue. It's a.
I would have said
Exactly,
not
exactly.
jurisdictional.
I mean, it's a DEP issue from the noise standpoint, but the solution, the back end solution is not a DEP back end solution.
I think it's fair, though, we're bringing this to a head, and that's important. I think if you live in this building, there's roosters there. It's like a very unpleasant way to live your life, I would think.
Oh,
It would be
sure.
unpleasant to me, I guess I'd say, as a normal citizen. And so this is the tool we have. And like, I would encourage the other departments who are here to look into it on their time.
Right.
But I think it's fair for us to say, we'll bring this matter to a head. There'll be a hearing and they have an opportunity, which they should have, to explain why they're not currently making noise, or what they're gonna do to prevent the noise. And if the noise issue stops, then great, congratulations.
Right.
Then Department of Health or whoever can continue looking into it. And I would encourage them to do that, because this is, sounds like a really unpleasant place to live for their neighbors.
Okay, so let's do this. If anyone has any final points to contribute, please do, but then hold your points of view, hold your thoughts. We'll get through the others and we'll vote on them all at the end. Anyone, any other on this topic? Any other questions for us? Okay, good. All right, so Russ, let's,
Okay.
we
Yep,
will,
we'll move on
come
to
back.
the sewer related ones,
Okay.
of which there are three for this meeting. We'll do Pac Boston Management first.
Mhm.
This is located at 3770 Boston Road in the Bronx. It is a KFC. They, based on a DEP inspection,
See a theme.
in August of 2023, they were served with a commissioner's order requiring them to install grease traps on a 4-compartment sink on each of 4 floor drains, on a 1-compartment sink, and on a mop sink, all within 60 days, i.e. by October 13th of 23. When they did not comply with that order, they were then issued a series of summonses between February of 24 and April of this year. They were then also notified to appear at a mandatory compliance meeting at DEP's offices, which was scheduled for April 16th of this year, and they did not appear. Based on the failure to comply with the commissioner's order, and failure to come into comply in response to the repeated summonses that have been issued, the department is requesting that the board issue an order to cease and desist.
Thanks. Russ, if you know, Mr. Hoffman's statement refers to several summonses.
Yep.
Refers to one oath hearing, February 2025. Are there future oath hearings?
There are rescheduled dates
Okay.
for a couple of these. The rescheduled dates are 6/16.
Oh, I
it
see,
looks
I
like,
see.
For
Yep,
one of
I
them,
got
for
it.
both of them.
Okay,
2 of them are rescheduled for 6/16.
okay, thank you. So reschedule means that
Means that they,
the responding
they,
affirmatively.
that's through the clerk's office, not an adjournment.
Okay, so they're aware and responsive,
Right.
because they reached out. Okay, thank you. The service.
The only thing that's a little surprising about this is that it is a KFC, and normally they have corporate sort of compliance things. And it's a little surprising that a KFC would not be in compliance with this type of stuff, but,
But not a Kennedy Fried Chicken, which is a whole
No.
other. Right, no,
this is just a
New
KFC,
Yorkers know Kennedy Fried Chicken is a different ball of wax.
different thing.
All right, any other questions or comments on this one? Thank you. Russ?
Okay, now we are done hopefully with the chicken related requests. The next one is Stock One Deli Gourmet Corp., 320 Lafayette Avenue in Brooklyn. As you can see from the photograph at the end, this is a fairly standard sort of deli and grocery type of operation, of the type that are all over the place in New York City. Based on an inspection, an order was issued to them in July of 2023, requiring them to install a grease trap on a 3-compartment sink within 60 days, that is by September 18th of 23, beginning in November of 23 and continuing in February and May of 24 and January and March of this year. They were issued a series of summonses for not complying with the commissioner's order. They were also notified to appear at a mandatory compliance meeting on April 16th of this year, which they failed to appear for. And based on their continuing failure to comply with the order to install, and also in response to the repeated summonses, most of which, or perhaps all of which, appear to have gone into default, except for one, which was paid in full. The department is requesting that the board issue an order to cease and desist.
Questions?
And then the last one is Nabaya African American Restaurant at 860 Melrose Avenue in the Bronx. Again, the last page is a photo of the storefront for this one. This one, based on a DEP inspection in March of 2024, was issued an order to install grease traps on a 3-compartment sink, and was also, as part of a separate order, required to submit written proof of the proper disposal of the grease that they're generating. Apparently, they do have some grease traps, but are missing one on the 3-compartment sink. The cease and desist order would be basically for the installation on the sink. Doesn't really pertain to the paperwork part of it. In response to the failure to comply with the commissioner's order to install, summonses were issued in October of 24, December of 24, and February of 25. And when they had still not complied, they were directed to appear at a mandatory compliance meeting on April 16th, which they did not appear at. And based on the continuing failure to comply with the order, and also in response to the summonses, the department is requesting that the board issue an order to cease and desist. And there is one summons that is paid in full, and it looks like the rest of them are in default.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Okay, I'd like to ask for a motion for us to go through the whole group of these to vote on them. Is there a motion? Okay, a motion for Lisa, second for Matthew.
Are there any objections to the motion approving all 5 of the cease and desist orders?
I'm sorry, let me clarify. So this is a motion to just proceed to vote, but we're going to go on each one individually.
Oh, okay.
So do you
Okay.
need to recall,
So,
or do you want to go through them one by one?
no, I don't think we have to go through.
Okay, so then, or are you going, would you like to ask the group if we can proceed to voting?
Oh,
on
we
these
usually
individually?
don't vote. I can.
Okay.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Are there any objections to the motion proceeding to a vote on all 5?
Okay, no objections. All right, so let's go through these individually. Let's start with the chicken coop case. This is a request for an order to cease and desist by DEP concerning the premises at 40 Arden Avenue Street, Manhattan. So we're voting whether to approve the request for an order to cease and desist.
Okay, are there any objections to the motion approving the cease and desist order? Seeing none, hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to the request for an order to cease and desist regarding respondent Bridgeview 3 Housing Corp. And this concerns a sealing of boilers and burners.
Are there any objections to the motion approving the cease and desist order? Seeing none, hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously.
Okay, the next is PAC Boston Management Incorporated, a request for an order to cease and desist, and this concerns the grease interceptors.
Are there any objections to the motion approving the cease and desist order? Seeing none, hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously.
Okay, the next request for an order to cease and desist concerns respondent Stop One Deli Gourmet Corp., also related to the grease interceptor issue.
Are there any objections to the motion approving the cease and desist order? Seeing none, hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously.
And then finally, a request for order to cease and desist regarding respondent Nabaya African American Restaurant, Inc., also related to grease interceptor issues.
Are there any objections to the motion approving the cease and desist order? Seeing none, hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously.
Okay, thanks, everyone. The next item in our agenda is a brief update from DEP regarding the final rule regarding the water penalty schedule. Russ?
Right, so I don't think this is something that requires the board to take any action. It's just an FYI that we got approval from the law department yesterday to publish as a final rule the water penalty schedule, which if you remember, this was the one DEP penalty schedule that for sort of an obscure legal reason in the water code had been left behind in our rules and not moved to Oath's rules. Oath has already, I think, completed the process of promulgating their rule, repealing the water penalty schedule from Oath's rules. And now that this rule is ready to be finalized as part of DEP's rules, those two things will happen simultaneously. The Oath repeal will take effect on the same date that the water penalty schedule becomes effective in DEP's rules. So now that we have gotten the final certification from the law department, I would anticipate that we're going to submit this to the city record at the beginning of next week, and that the effective date will probably be sometime in July.
Okay, thank you, Russ. Next, we'll move on to selecting dates for our next ECB meeting. I'd like to propose, this would be in August, so we understand that there may be holidays and vacations. I'd like to propose August 7 or August 14. Does anyone have any conflicts with those dates?
No conflict, but I prefer the 7th.
Yeah, the earlier.
I wouldn't be able to come on the 14th.
And same here, I would be out on the 14th, but Frank would share. Is August 7th amenable to everyone? Okay, our next meeting will be on August the 7th. I'd like to just remind everyone, if you haven't signed the attendance sheet, please do. And I'd like to ask for a motion and a second to adjourn today's meeting. The motion, I see a second.
Are there any objections to the motion to adjourn the meeting? Seeing none, hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. We'll adjourn the meeting.